Hello, and everyone, and welcome to the Trinity Aegis author interview. And today, I am Lee. I'm Lee every day, but today I am here with Kim, H, and Michaela, and we're going to talk about the upcoming crowdfunding campaign on BackerKit. There will be a link in chat. If you sign up now, you will be notified when it launches today at 2 p.m. Eastern. But for now, we're going to go ahead and take a little chance to get to know our authors. Can we start with Kim? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. My name is Kim Godwin, she, her. I'm a constant freelancer with Onyx Path for the past 3 years. I've worked on a lot of They Came From. Uh, I started with Classified, and I've most recently worked on Witchford Academy with Michele. I've also been a part of The World Below, Trinity Continuum, Aberrant, Aether. I'm currently living in Japan with the Navy.
Great. Thanks for letting us know. And go ahead, Michaela. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Michele Masala, him. I'm a Onyx freelancer and developer from Italy. I worked on the Chronicles of Darkness, the World of Darkness. I developed for Scion. I'm developing for Trinity Continuum Heater, and I worked on the World Below as well, Exalted, and on a lot of They Came From. I wrote on lots of They Came From books, and I pitched and co-developed They Came From the Cyclops' Cave, and I developed They Came From the Witchford Academy. So I've been busy.
Sounds like it. They all sound like exciting projects to be working on. H, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm lucky enough to have worked on several Trinity books, including Adventure and the Player's Guide. I'm currently working on the Aether Companion under Michaela, which is great. I've worked on Exalted, and I'm a huge fan of tabletop games. I currently live in Pennsylvania.
Oh, fantastic. A little bit about me. I'm Lee. I do occasional actual play streaming and interviews here for Onyx Path. So you'll find me mostly here from time to time when I'm not busy hiding under the bed. So while we're here, let's go ahead and talk about just in general. Can you tell us a little bit about Trinity Aegis and what we can expect from the new release that we'll be funding soon? Any of you?
Well,
Kim, you are the first in the chapters, I think. You come
literally.
earlier than any of us.
So yeah, I wrote part of chapter 1. Michele wrote the other part, but I got to write about the world that came before the setting actually starts. So I had to do a lot of historic research, and then fill in a lot of blanks for according to the game lore. So of course we started during the Bronze Age collapse. So it was definitely something that we were told, do our historic research, but it's not a history book. There's a lot of gray area for what was going on at the time. So I found a lot of things where stuff it's like, well, we think this might have happened, but we're not quite sure. And then looking at the myths, it's like, well, we think this is where Hercules landed for his labors, but it's really Spain. It's not actually Greece. He discovered the Strait of Gibraltar and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, okay, well, how does that fit into our setting? And then uh, lining up those pieces about what could have happened, like the kingdom of Shu in China had a lot of things that were going for it with a lot of international trade and stuff, but then that society kind of just got buried and disappeared, and was rediscovered in the past like 20 years. And it's like, what happened here? There's all this stuff, metallurgy and stuff that happened during this time. So it's like, okay, well, that's a cool mystery. We can put that in there. Or doing history about Scandia, for this time period. And then it's like, oh, Vikings didn't exist now, but people are going to want to write Vikings into the setting. So they're going to want some people are going to want Vikings. So how do we address that as a sidebar sort of thing? So it's a nice mix of yes, we take a lot of inspiration from history, but there's so much wiggle room because a lot of the writing and documentation during this time is so little. Like Greece, even with its like 3 writing systems, stopped recording stuff for this time period because there wasn't as much international trade, and we don't know why. So it's like we miss there's a lot of stuff where it was well, this society rose up, then disappeared, and then rose up again. So like when we talk about the Minoans, um, there's a bunch of stuff that ruins even that during the Bronze Age collapse. So there's a lot of things to check into.
Sounds like a lot of in-depth research went into this chapter. What was your
Uh,
favorite part?
well, I had a lot of fun looking up like what was going on in China at the time because there wasn't a lot of records. Looking up who the Sea People were because we don't know who the Sea People were, even though Ramses had like records of defeating them very
Mhm.
trouncely. And he wrote it on an obelisk like several miles high. It's like I defeated them. So there was lots of cool stuff. So looking into what other countries were doing at this time and including that was also a lot of fun because we hear a lot about what Greece was doing, but not a lot in Europe, but not really about like what Oceania was doing
Mhm.
or that sort of thing.
And that's all included as content in the book, or at
Yes.
least referenced.
Hmm.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Something fun to look into.
Oh yeah. It's in chapter 1, so it should be one of the first previews. So
We are likely getting the first one. We were you, I, and someone else. I can't quite really recall because we work all separately on different sections. I had from chapter 1. I had the last part of chapter 1, which I'm really thankful to Lauren Roy, our most splendid developer there, because she gave me the strange places, so I got to be go weird with mythology and provide people with places where Greek myths and the the events that make Aegis collide together in some ways more literal than others. And so I could well, people will see that I don't want to preview too much, but I know that it has been said that I was given the pretty much free reign to have fun with the setting, and I figured that a setting back in time this way would need its own Atlantis, but pre-syncing. So I had the pleasure of making up the Atlantean Empire for Aegis. They are most likely a source of antagonists, though nothing stops you from making characters from there, even if heroic ones are likely to look at what Atlantis is doing and try to uh, make uh, some steps to stop what Atlantis is doing, basically. And so I know that Atlantis is gonna be a fun part of that I wrote for, that I came up with the concept with. But it's not even my favorite part because I made up lots of other cool places. I decided what is going on under the Etna and the other volcanoes in southern Italy. I found a place for Echidna and Typhon. There's something going on about a place called the Tartarus Vault that is probably not the most pleasant of places, and other places that involve labyrinths, oracles, and woods where people do rites in the name of Hecate or something. So I have lots of cool, strange places that are supernatural in a Trinity sense here. So that's part of my contribution there.
So you would say your contribution is to add like a spookiness or a more wonderful element, super
Oh
wonderful.
yes, there are plenty of that, especially in the characters and in the antagonists as well, because what happens in Aegis creates an era where people have powers in tune what one might find in the myths. So that's certainly not only my part in there, but I had the pleasure of making places for heroes and villains to explore, a couple of factions like the Atlantean Empire, even though most of the factions come from the society's chapters, of course, as is usual for either. So I perhaps I had this occasion to make locations and people who inhabit them, basically.
That's great to hear. H, what did you work on? If you're talking, you're still muted.
Oh.
We'll find out later. So can you tell us a little more about the setting and the time frame of the Aegis, Trinity Aegis book?
So of course, we're talking about Bronze Age collapse time period. So this is immediately afterwards. We do focus primarily on Greece, but we do expand out further from that. So a lot of main setting stuff does happen on Greece itself, but it isn't the main focus. So you do have our oracles, we do have our Greek heroes. Of course, you see Greek stylings all over the cover and some of the art, but it isn't the main. It isn't the only area where we focus the setting.
Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, so I got a last second burst. Ooh, excuse me. Go ahead. And H, it appears, is back. So we wanted to know what you worked on in the Aegis setting. Excuse me while I recover.
Most of my material was generally on the nature of champions, one of the playable character types, and also on things like the particular interaction between inspiration and heroes in the setting, which has some very interesting stuff tying back both into myths and stories from the period, but also to the sort of greater Trinity Continuum. So that was a lot of fun to write. And there's a lot of neat stuff in there, both for people who just are more focused on the heroes, Bronze Age empowered heroes, and for people who really like the ties into the greater Trinity Continuum.
That was really fun. When I was working on the actual play, it was really hard for me to choose between the different character types. I mean, there was an appeal in everything. So I really liked the champions, but ultimately I did go with an oracle, unfortunately. But it was really cool to read what you read. Unfortunately, yeah, no. And no, it was a lot of fun. I had not played Trinity in a long time, so it was a fun way to get back into the system. We do have a question. Is there storyteller advice to increase the presence of gods in an Aegis game? And is it very different from Scion?
I would say yes, it is a very different game because this isn't a urban fantasy game. This is a science fiction game with a lot of fantastical elements. So if you want to have gods, I would be kind of tricky because usually the presence of a god in any sense makes your players feel like they don't have any power. And the idea is we want to empower our players to be able to do cool things. So if you have your gods step in, or however you wish to present them, even if they are like a more powerful oracle or champion, you don't want to take all the luster and steam out of your player characters. So it's like, have them be kind of in the background but not necessarily in the foreground. It's however you wish to approach it.
Yeah, and without getting into setting secrets for more than one reason, nonetheless, that it's the last chapter that will get revealed. And I don't want to have Lawrence send assassins after me. it is a different game from Scion for because everything here, without giving spoilers, is more in a sense of a technology that makes things magical for the people of the time. A lot of inspiration for the game I know comes from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, that sort of had that thing going for itself, even if it never always explained things, and so often the characters in game didn't realize that the way that we're dealing with was actually would you have technology from in the case of Odyssey, not in the case of Aegis, technology from precursor civilization that was in Odyssey. So the characters in there never sometimes didn't know, and the same for a lots of characters in Aegis. They don't know necessarily all the secrets of their setting they live in, but it's different from the more straightforward supernatural things that are going in Scion, basically.
I will say that they are very different games, having played both now, and they have very different feel to them. But I do appreciate with Aegis that you have a light touch with the gods. You don't feel as directly connected to them as you might in Scion, and you do get a chance to shine as a player.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about hero cults, at least I did, where someone's super strong and then the story kind of just spins out of control. Kind of like I remember when I was much, much younger, I remember reading an article about how this one archaeological dig found this gigantic skeleton, and people were saying, "Hey, this is the skeleton of Hercules," and it's supposedly like this giant skeleton. And I think later on it turned out to be like it was like mammoth bones or something weird that they had arranged into like a human shape. But it was like, okay, well, that was that's they attributed all this stuff to this skeleton that wasn't really human, and said this is Hercules. And like there's like I think somewhere in Spain there's also like a crypt to Hercules, that sort of thing, about where he might have been. Or you have a lot of in mythology there's a lot of speculation how one hero was actually like several heroes kind of meshed together, kind of like every British king is a descendant of King Arthur, sort of thing. So things kind of get a little bit muddied with an oral history because there is no records, there's no genealogy. So if someone comes up and says, "I'm the son of Zeus," no one's gonna be like, "Do you have your 23andMe? Where's your DNA? Prove this to me." So you have a lot of wiggle room for people to come up and say, "You know what? I'm strong," and people say, "Oh, he's strong. He must be the son of Zeus because Zeus fucks everything," sort of thing. So you have that sort of things too. So you can think about it that way. In an age where you don't have that sort of, maybe you might be full of it. You see, it's like fantastical things. So if someone comes up with the head of a gorgon, or defeats the big bad, they're like, okay, I guess you might be the son of a god. If not, you're dead. So
Right. We do have another question related to this. So then the deities are not directly involved. We don't have Poseidon and Apollo going, "Hey, I bet I can mess with them more than you."
Not to the degree of Scion. You can certainly alter things to your liking, but the premise and the direct bond between the characters and the people of the setting and the presence of the gods is different than that of the word, the capital D word of Scion. It's certainly different, because otherwise we would have Scion, and that's no point. We wanted to make a different game that fits Trinity, and that's what we did.
now I
Yeah.
could see, if you really wanted to, you could have someone that thinks they're Poseidon and someone who thinks they're Apollo, and they could have some sort of weird bet based on the outcome of things. But I don't think it'd be to the same level as like Scion, where it's like no kidding, Poseidon sending shipwrecking you or something like that. There's there is exploration
That's
and stuff.
what the Olympians are doing is very setting secret. So we'll save it there and
Yeah.
leave it for you to discover.
You want to know, you can go ahead and support the crowdfunding campaign that will be starting on BackerKit. There will be a campaign link in chat, and you can sign up now to be notified when it goes live today at 2 p.m. Eastern. I want to touch again on something that you had said, Kim, about the world of antiquity. It's not just focused on Greece, but it's Mount Olympus and beyond. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah. So, since I talked about the world before, so I talked about the people of the Nile during this time that camped. We use for some of these we did use the Greek words for it. So it's Aegyptus here instead of camped, which was what they called themselves. Like I talked about Albion, which is kind of Greece, kind of not kind of Greece. It's kind of United Kingdom, but not. It's kind of like it was really weird. I was looking at a lot of maps. I was talking about Scandia, which is like Scandinavia. I talk about Oceania. I talk about Shang, which is more like China during this time period. So it was like trying to find little things from everywhere and trying to write about what that world was, and then tying in with the other chapters what other people were working on. So it's like, okay, well, I talk about the Picts a little bit. I talk about Shu and Shang. I talk about Egypt a little bit, what they were doing before Ambrosia comes along. But it helps that Egypt had a lot of documentation still. They actually had ancient archaeologists during their time period too. So it's like, what came before? I don't know. We're gonna look into it sort of. So that was kind of fun too.
Tied into that, we do have another audience question saying, I kind of wanted to have Inuit hunters hunting a giant wolf in the north of Canada. Is that doable?
Absolutely. There's not much more to elaborate. I didn't talk about North America too much, but you could very well. It's like if you want to do it, man. It's there's nothing stopping you.
There's a lot of tools available in the book for things that may not be more explicitly covered. It's very easy to do that, especially if you already have an idea of what you want to do. That being said, like the material that we have for the focus of the setting is fantastic, but it's also very easy to transplant it elsewhere or even elsewhere if you really wanted to.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on elsewhen? Do you mean like previous or going into the future or?
Either or. Trinity is a system and sort of meta setting that is, I think, very at home with shifting bits around and transplanting things. And if you wanted to place champions, Olympians, and occultists, champions, oracles, and Olympians on an island in modern day or the future, or having found a world elsewhere during their time and having Aeon run into them in the far future, I think you could do that pretty easily. And similarly, if you really want to run Olympians popping back up in, I don't know, revolutionary France, you could. But again, it's not the focus, but I like that. One of the things I love about the Trinity books is that the tools are very strong if you wanted to do that.
And the books are, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, yeah, there's a lot of wiggle room for things. So if you want to include this, you can. It's just like just take what, just move it forward to whatever setting you want to put it in.
Yeah, and while the focus is mostly on the Mediterranean, we do touch upon other places, and here is just me making theories. I imagine that future supplements for Aegis might as well include more attention to other places in the era, but aren't strictly on the Mediterranean itself. The potential is certainly there, and it's a possibility by design from the core already. So we'll see.
Where would you like to explore in the Bronze Age, or the era of Aegis, rather, we can call it?
Well, perhaps it's because I am from the Mediterranean. The places in here. I do include bits from my chapter, characters that come from Egypt as well. So that would be cool, I think. Perhaps, yes, I probably stay around the Mediterranean area and explore places more, because I feel that as a first step, it helps to expand what's in the general area around Greece and everything. So and it's easier for the people to interact in that place, basically.
Kim, did you have anywhere you would like to explore in the time of Aegis?
Uh, hmm, yeah, I had a lot of fun writing Shang, Shang and Shu, because there's just like a lot of like mystery stuff in there. Um, so I wrote about it. I had like a section about it, specifically about those areas. I wouldn't have minded having more word count to talk more about Oceania and what they were doing, because that included Australia, New Zealand, and then the Polynesian islands. But of course, that landscape was constantly shifting because of volcanic activity and stuff like that. And there's like a lot of the big stop happened too. So like they're a nation of explorers, but they're not sure where they came from. So like exploring more into that would be a lot of fun, I think.
I agree. H, do you have a particular area you'd like to explore in future releases?
Well, I think that there's a ton of space for mythical and legendary places there. Everything from like sort of uh, period Egyptian, uh, basically like you have reports to the pharaoh of, hey, this is what's over there. Some of which are pretty fantastical, and I think that could be a really interesting direction to explore. Uh, or even weirder stuff, because again, Trinity is a very wide setting, so there's plenty of space for weird things like uh, uh, our heroes going off dimension or off planet. So
The books do tend to be a little compatible. They're not exactly the same game, but you could easily borrow or, loan from other settings and other
Oh,
other Trinity materials to build a campaign. So in the actual play we did, we actually started in ancient Greece, and then we went all the way up to the moon or something like that, and into outer space, traversing all the different Trinity products, which was
Mhm.
not what I expected to do, but it was fun in its own way. So I would say that yes, it is very compatible, and you could do a lot with the setting and the material provided. Um, let's talk about how the challenge of presenting fantastical elements like the era of myth in a setting that has sci-fi undertones, and what were some of the challenges in presenting that in the Trinity Aegis book?
you mind if I start?
Go for it.
I think one of the important things was sometimes it's very easy to fall into the idea that people in the past are, if not stupid, at least ignorant and superstitious in a way that undersells both their capability and like how almost how human we see them. And I think it was very important that we, both for purposes of just being more accurate, but also for getting people into the mindset of heroes in the period, to remind people and to that these are clever, intelligent people at the cutting edge of both their mundane and fantastical setting, right? And so one of the things I really like about Aegis, as opposed to some other games and settings for the period, is that we very much keep the idea that no, these are people who are thoughtful about their abilities, the world they live in, and aren't just stumbling blindly around in darkness. and I think that's really helpful, but on both on a practical level, for GMs running a game for modern day players, but also for players for sympathizing with and inhabiting their characters in that world.
It's a sort of enlightenment in and of itself, would you say?
I think that's very fair to say. And it's both, like, the characters obviously have a very privileged role in the time period. Uh, but again, it's a time period where people are actively, like, we're engaging with ideas and actively, uh, you know, starting schools of philosophy that would be reflected, like, in all Muslims or on all the civilizations later. And I think just sort of giving them credit for that is both makes the game more interesting and playable, and also just opens up options for characters and players.
Michaela, Kim, do you have any input on this?
Well, I do agree with what H said. I think that I might add that essentially the key to having fantastical elements while knowing that you have sci-fi going is it's actually simpler than it might seem. Basically, you do have to perhaps find a reason of why those sci-fi elements would manifest in fantastical ways, and just explain what happens there. It doesn't matter what makes your Cyclops in a game. It doesn't matter that much when you present the Cyclops itself, because the strength of the monster, in case it's enough to make people care about it and what conflicts it brings to the story. Sure, if you do have in mind what's behind that Cyclops and craft the secrets behind it in a certain way that fits the idea and the setting you have at hand, it's gonna be more rewarding for people. I think it's very important to have the stories in either be mindful of that, because sorry, not either Aegis. Too many A titles here. I'm working right now in Aegis. Work on that, because you want to people once they get to the end of the story, see that they are part of the Aegis setting and not just a Greek myth thing with the story path system supporting it. I think that's the trickiest part, but it's also very important to make people play Trinity Continuum Aegis with all that entails.
But yeah, I also agree. I know it's a big trap to say that any great accomplishment of the age goes to aliens or foreign influence, but they were like, some of these kingdoms were doing things that were far more advanced than we thought they were. We just didn't know about it until recently because it was buried underneath, like, an earthquake happened or a volcano happened, or some weird war thing happened and things got razed to the ground or buried. So I think while it's easier to say aliens, it's like, well, no, actually they had that technology. It's just lost because a bunch of bad stuff happened and we just lost they just got isolated or they got buried underneath lava.
Yes, we certainly went out of our way to not go the ancient aliens route for Aegis, both because well, it comes
Racist.
with a certain yes, it's bluntly racist and comes with all the possible problematic connotations. So that's something that we didn't want at all in the game, and it's also the cheap solution. And so we found more interesting ways to make an Aegis setting that doesn't come with all that awful baggage in there. And we make a point to say that out loud, that where people are doing things, it's because there are people doing things. Even if it's the Trinity setting, and we all know that there are aliens somewhere in the Trinity setting, it doesn't mean that the accomplishment of people don't belong to them. And to be honest, even the 97% of what's weird and going on in Aegis isn't something that's alien related. There are a couple of bits here and there because it's part of the setting we felt appropriate, but it's very more of a reference to Trinity than something we didn't want to go into. And I think we created something much cooler and much more respectful and inclusive because of our efforts there.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, the Ancient Aliens is also kind of boring and played out at this point.
Mm.
And it takes away a lot of the agency that the players would have, really. So I think that's an excellent choice. We have two questions. One is going to lead into something else, so I'm going to ask that second. So let's take, what part of the sacrifice, hope, and unity does this focus more on?
I think it's. I'll ask the others because I certainly want to hear what they think. But I think it's a fair balance because you're in a era and a setting where things aren't easy because it's so much back in time that you have to fight for to maintaining the hope and the unity of your people and the people you care about. And so fighting comes with sacrifice. I think it's a fair balance of the Trinity aspects in here. I don't know if H and Kim agree here.
Well, I think because this is an age of scarcity, Bronze Age collapse, society is drastically changing. People aren't going out and doing international trade. The Greeks lost a lot of their writing because they were no longer doing the massive shipbuilding, so they didn't need to keep track of that sort of thing. This is after the war with Troy, where all the fleets got raised and the great heroes are doing their thing and like taking forever to get home to their families. Be it the gods or other reasons, bad life choices. Um, so that leaves the people that are behind. So leaving home was the greatest adventure back then because you didn't have communication. Transportation was really hard. Having a horse to ride was a great luxury when you're trying to figure out how to get your crops going, or you have to go out and hunt. And beyond the boundaries of your city, there's danger. There's bandits, there's monsters. You can get sick and die. There's just like leaving home was such a big deal. So if you want to go out and do the big adventure to defend your family, to find out where did dad go? I'm gonna go find dad. Maybe things will get better once I find him. He's out. He went out to Troy and he hasn't come back. Maybe if I find out what happened, we can get that closure for the family. Um, so leaving home is a big sacrifice. Say leaving your comfortable life behind to go out and do these things, to go out and do these quests is a sacrifice. But you do it because you have hope for the future. And working together with the community is how everyone survives, because the reason why everything collapsed is because of the Great Wars, because of all of the unrest, that sort of thing. And in order to survive, everyone has to work together. So if you have a bunch of great heroes that work together for the betterment of society, you have that unity, you have that hope for the future. It's like things are bad right now, but if we work together, things will get better. It's just who's willing to make that sacrifice. So I do think it does play into a lot of those really well.
I think that that's all very accurate. And the only thing I'd really have to add to that is that in a setting like this, unity is really an aspiration. Uh, because in a lot of cases, especially given the collapse, that's very much the opposite end from what most people are experiencing. But I think that makes it potentially a very strong goal for characters, whether locally or setting wide. So I think that's worth saying.
Those are all very interesting answers, and a very interesting exploration of the Trinity Foundation. So I'm going to go back to the question that we got about character types. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about the developer's perspective on defining these character types, but specifically the question we had was, do the oracle character types encapsulate people like Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or great sages?
Well, they certainly cover the role of sages, of people gifted with knowledge over or abilities to understand, interact, and predict a lot. I think there's not something specific about Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, I'd say, but it's part their character type certainly is in tune with that sort of vocation and disposition of character, I think.
It'd be easier if Lauren was here. It's like, okay, what can we not say?
We are a little with our lips rather than hands tied here a little bit. Yes.
No spoilers, no spoilers. You're going to have to crowdfund the campaign on BackerKit. There is a link that posts in the chat. So if you sign it now, you can be notified when it launches today at 2 p.m.
Well, if we consider who people like the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas are, you know, they are people that have reached the next level of enlightenment. They have words of wisdom and that sort of thing. If we're talking about the real world sense, then yeah, they kind of do, because the oracles are fit into that sort of role. So I would think that, yeah, you could very well do that. Go that path with them. We'll have to wait for that chapter to come out to go more into how exactly they do that.
Yeah.
Also, Lauren is lurking in chat, so we have to. She helpfully pointed out on Twitch. So we have to be more careful about what we don't let slip and don't let slip. But I think when it comes to character types, like much of, again, Trinity, it's very flexible if that's what you're interested in exploring. And you have a wide variety of tools to do a wide variety of things. I think what might be the big, like, honestly, I think I can say this without spoiling anything. I think some of the naming conventions for the gifts may provide some people to go, oh, wait, this is really specifically this thing. I can't use it for something else. When it's like, oh, this is here's a non-spoiler example. Oh, this is named after a Greek mythological figure. Can I use this for a character who's not Greek? And the answer is yes. The focus just happens to be the Mediterranean, but it's perfectly fine, even if like a gift mentions Nyx or Zeus or Proteus, to use that as a character from another background. And in fact, if that's a thing your character specifically refers to put it in the context of that background.
So that's oracles covered pretty. Yes, we're not spoiling anything. Let's talk about champions. And to tie into that, what's everyone's favorite Greek mythical hero and or historical figure? The person who asked says there's our Achilles and Hannibal.
When it comes from Greek heroes, I'll probably go with Odysseus. I always like the Odyssey, so I probably go with him.
I really like Helen of Sparta. Like, looking into who she actually was definitely quite interesting. I have a little sidebar about her, actually. So like who she actually was. The fact that she's from Sparta says a lot, actually. Then of course, looking at Desdemona, who is the precursor for Persephone. was also really interesting too. Because this isn't a Scion book, I didn't really get to go into the gods themselves and like the different naming conventions, but I thought that was kind of cool.
My favorites are probably Hector from the Trojan War has always been one of my favorite characters who ends up being a very tragic character like one of the heroes.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, any opportunity I have to overthrow the Trojan War and make it end differently, I will take. So that's one of those things that I'm always a sucker for that. And as the Ascor already, assuming we're talking about the wider antiquity, but as our question includes like Hannibal, who's the Carthaginian general, I'm gonna go way out in front. And though he claims descent, I think from Zeus, Mithridates, the king of Pontus, who's a much later historical figure, but is fascinating. And if you're unfamiliar, he's the one who allegedly dosed himself with poison in low doses so he couldn't be poisoned, and then poisoned a lot of his enemies. And he has a life story that sounds like he's a player character. So,
Oh yeah.
if people are unfamiliar, I very much encourage looking him up.
I really don't have a lot of input on how the game runs, but for the actual play, I was Clymene, the mother of Phaeton and the spouse of Helios, and that was a lot of fun to get into and research. So that I'll use that as my answer. And before we get to the question about how many chapters there are in the book, let's go ahead and touch on the last category of player characters, the Olympians. What can you tell us about that without spoiling anything? Shh, no spoilers. Shh.
Well, the Olympians are, when it comes to tier of characters, are the equivalent to the Magogs, to the Aberrants, and so you can guess from that and the name what kind of power fantasy that we are talking about here. It's really the high-powered part of high-powered in a sense of flashy and sort of divine that what Aegis can offer.
They're definitely the ones that you look at and say, probably something going on there because we don't have steroids in this era. There's something about them. I just can't put my finger on it. It's like what makes you. It's like they're the most overt character class, kind of like the Magogs are, or the Aberrants are. It's like, oh, okay, there's something not quite right about you, but it's kind of cool.
Right.
Well, the Novas, not the
Yeah.
So we'll come back and say how many chapters are in the book as of right now?
Let me see. I think it's not that spoilery to say that we have
With the appendix, there's 8.
8. Sort of standard Trinity core practices there. You can expect a similar amount of chapters of what you've seen in Anima, in Adventure, in Ether, and that.
Okay. So were there any things that you particularly enjoyed working on in bringing this manuscript together?
Personally, I really loved the act of finding a specific kind of sci-fi explanation for the myths that I love. I think Lauren contacted us all. Things were really secretive at the beginning, and when we signed new things, we discovered what Aegis was, and we were all ecstatic because I think that Lauren picked people that she knew would love the premise of Aegis, or that are notoriously fans of mythology and stuff. I think my loud noises about They Came from the Cyprus Escape likely helped me score a place on this book. And finding explanations that work in the wider setting of Trinity for what's going on, perhaps on Crete, or well, like I said before, under the Aetna or with Atlantis. I really love to tinker with the tools I had to play with the stories I love.
Kim, what about you?
So I'm a researcher professionally. So like me going into doing my fun research was I have to pick a time to stop researching because I spent way too much time looking up pottery from the time period, and looking at the different designs of it because it's like, well, what did they eat? How did they? What vessels did they use? What technology did they use? What did they wear? And I had to stop at a certain point. Like I started going into that YouTube spiral, uh, of documentaries and then like article spirals, and I just had to stop. It's just a lot of fun for me to dig through these little pieces of history and then like, okay, how do I fit this into my setting? And it's like, okay, this is too much. I need to step back. We have to be fantastical. And then I love that if you start digging around in mythology, you'll start seeing common themes. Like the concept of a world tree is not exclusive to Norse mythology. There's also one in Chinese mythology. It was like, well, what if I could include that in this setting? In this setting as a plot hook. So it was very similar to how I approached Aether when I was writing the societies. It's like, well, what thing could I include that would be a cool thing for the players to investigate, or a GM or a story guide to say, let's look for the golden fleece. Let's look for this tree that's guarded by this dragon, sort of thing. So for me, the research itself is a lot of fun because it's like finding that weird little blip. It's like, oh, that's actually a thing. Let's actually use that. This isn't as well. I had to really dig to find this piece of mythology, so let's use it.
H, what was your favorite thing to look into?
So a lot of the views on fate and fortune from sort of a period perspective and through like various Mediterranean societies were really interesting to do for how champions came out, and also how they related to like, oh, so we have this is actionable things in the game through inspiration. What do people think about this? Because this is something that we know the Greeks thought about a lot, right? And so did the Egyptians, and so did everybody else. Like sun turns of fate, or like when chance events were wonderful or horrible, and making that into and finding that out, and like going back and re-examining some of those ideas, and then going back and trying to make that something that players could actively invest in and do stuff with was a lot of fun. There are some wild extrapolations for that that I hope people don't miss. But that was a great time, and I'm very happy that Lauren chose to tap me for this because I had a wonderful time working on the book, and it's great.
And if you'd like to know more, you can always crowdfund the campaign on BackerKit. There will be a campaign link in the chat, and you can sign up now to be notified when it goes live today, launching at 2 p.m. Eastern. We do have one question that's not really a question, more of a comment. Someone wants to let us know that they are hyped about this so much, and thank you all of you guys for doing this and working on this. Every game we make is incredible, and they are a loyal fan until we start making product.
Thanks. It's not a question, so it's a compliment, and I don't know how to take those, so I just say thank you very much for the loyalty there.
Yeah, thanks for supporting our projects. We're really excited to talk about it. I'm really excited to be almost free of the NDA to talk about it. My husband isn't as into role-playing games as I am, so anytime I don't get to talk about these things until they come out, and then it's just like my friends, they're like, "Did you work on this project?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but because they get spammed on my social medias when these come out, so.
Whoever asked that question is very wise, sagacious, and should feel good about themselves. That's all I have to say.
So thank you so much for letting Onyx Path know, the writers and developers about your enthusiasm. It is always, always appreciated. We've been notified that there is 1 hour to go until the campaign launches on
Ooh.
Backer Kit. Ooh. So hurry up, sign up now to get notified, or just go ahead and sign up in an hour and drop however much it will cost to get whatever it is you want out of the product. I don't have anything more to ask. Is there anything you guys want to add before we wrap it up and head on out?
Well, I'll just say that while Ether taps into my love for Victorian fiction, and in a very way I felt it was the Trinity game made for me, when Aegis happened, I felt that answers to another part of me that are now both fighting one against each other at full strength, and I really can't decide which game I love the most. So I really recommend you to check out Aegis, because I think everyone here did a splendid job and crafted a game that might end up being my favorite for Trinity for now. I don't know. It's really tough. There are, inside of me there are two Trinities. Well, I love the others as well, but Aegis, like Ether, taps into very deep-rooted parts of me, and so it was really a pleasure to work on this for me. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I love working on all of these. I like doing different things. I do a lot of genre jumping. So for me, it's just kind of like some sort of whiplash when I'm going from one project to the other. But I really love working on these. I love talking about them. I love that I get to indulge my inner book dragon where I just hoard all my books and annoy my husband with them. But yeah, it's like I love doing these. I love playing them. I like exploring the different themes from different angles. Working on this and then working on Cyclops' Cave. They're parallel, but they're different. So it's really fun.
After this is done, you'll get to discover which Onyx Path game made the best Cyclops for you, because we have plenty now. We have them in Scion, the best Cyclops and the best Hydras, because we have in Scion, we have in Aegis, and plenty of versions of Greek monsters for you to decide which one is the best for you.
We should just release a book that's like here how to make Cyclops and Hydras and all the sort of horrible Greek monsters for every game that there is.
And then of course you can make them in World Below as well.
Yeah.
Go for a completely different angle. But yeah, definitely different ways of approaching it, different ways of doing it. And Ian's cursing that dang Dawkins, but yes.
H, did you have a favorite part that you worked on, or anything that you wanted to add? Rather,
just that working with everybody was fantastic. I love the way the book is looking. Big shout out to Laura and Rory for making this possible. The book wouldn't exist without her. I'm sorry she could not be on the call with us. And that, thanks to all the Trinity fans for coming back and letting us keep doing these, because we couldn't do it without you guys. And I hope you enjoy them, talking about them, playing them, running them, mashing them up like trial fighting with action figures. This is something I know some people sort of do, and I fully encourage. So it's been a pleasure and a privilege. So.
well, I wanted to say personally, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and for answering everyone's questions. I'll go ahead and wrap up. Once again, I am Lee. You can find me here doing actual plays and interviews on Onyx Path. And we're here today with the authors of Trinity Aegis. Can you go ahead and introduce yourselves or outintroduce yourselves? I'm not sure how that works. Just tell us a little bit about yourself as we say goodbye.
I don't want to go first again. I don't find the spotlight comfortable, so someone else go first before me.
Okay, H.
I'm H. Ulrich, you can find me on Blue Sky at Snautibus, like the thing says. Uh, I'd say I love working on Trinity, Exalted, and Scion for Onyx Path, and hope to keep doing so for a long time.
All right, I'm Kim Godwin. I'm one of the many freelancers. I worked on They Came From. Most recently, I put out the They Came From Beyond the Grave. Tasty Bit, Don't Open the Gates, which is now available. I also worked on The World Below Ashcan, which is also available on Drive-Thru RPG. But you can find me on, unfortunately, I'm still on Twitter and Instagram, KimGodwin18. You can also find me at my website, KimberlyGodwin.com or studiohnh.com.
I'm Michele Masala, and I had the pleasure of working on Trinity Aegis, and I'm developing. They came from the Witchford Academy. I'm developing the Ether Companion and the God Companion for Scion instead. So there's plenty of projects with cool writers delivering me the cool stuff. And I also wrote for The World Below, which I know is sort of planned to go on crowdfunding later this year. I don't know when, but it's coming and it's big. And I'm still nominally on Twitter, but don't look for me there. The thing is dying and it's painful. So just look for Ghost of Cinders on Tumblr. I hang there and share nerdy stuff and my takes on dark fantasy, on mythology, and everything geeky I can think of. And I'll concur with my dear colleagues that making this game is really one of the best things I get to do with uh, my time on this planet. So I hope that you enjoy them, and I hope to continue to write on this as long as I have some breath going, and if I wake up as a zombie and still can write, perhaps even
And yeah, just the zombie freelancers
then.
smashing at the keyboards as we go. All right,
That's
I
another
believe
game line.
that is another game line. Sorry, they came from beneath the keyboards or something. I believe that is all the time we have. So I want to say thank you to everyone. Again, the crowdfunding campaign is available on BackerKit. We've just posted the link in chat. If you sign up now, you'll be notified when it launches today at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's just under 1 hour. A great big special thank you to Michaela and Kim and H for being here today with me. Thank you to Travis for doing our tech today, and for Ian handling the moderation in the chat. So thank you so much. And Lauren too. Lauren, who is the head of the project, I guess,
Yes,
and
indeed.
developer. Yeah. So thank you so much to everyone who worked on this fantastic, wonderful game. Having played it, I can say absolutely everyone should just throw all of their money, great big piles of money at it on the BackerKit as it goes live in less than 1 hour. So thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone, and have fun.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.